Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's the end of the morning, but it's still morning. I'm very happy to be here, and Sunil, I congratulate you with your beautiful initiative. I think it's so important for Europeans to get an in-depth understanding of what India can be for them, about what India can bring them as a source of manufacturing, as a market, and also as a culture, because we have a lot in common. We have a lot in common. Some speakers have said it. We have our democratic values in common. We even have the beautiful English language in common, which we Europeans need to use if we want to talk to each other. It's a pity the British leave, but they will leave us with the beautiful language for which we are grateful. And then next to that, I think we share the values of family. I'm a businessman, active here in Europe, but also in India, and I'm associated with an Indian family, and we share kind of the same family values, the entrepreneurial values, and the long-term view those families and business often have and need to have in order to survive. But I have much more intelligent people here around me who will talk to you about their experience with India. All of them are from Europe. Some of them have lived and worked in India. And I start with the lady to the right of me, if you look from there, which is Daria Kalperina, who's from the beautiful country of Estonia, and who now is a Frenchie, kind of. But living in Brussels, which is a good move. She's not alone. A lot of French people live in Brussels for specific reasons, but your reason is another reason. It's a business reason. And she is the senior manager for international trade at Pernod Ricard. Pernod Ricard, Pernod is with a D, because it has been written with a T in the documents. And Mrs. Calperina will talk to us about all the opportunities she sees in India for Pernod Ricard, all the problems she faces, all the beautiful future developments she's planning. Mm-hmm. And then totally on the left is a lawyer from Spain. Spain is a country which is nicely recovering. You have a prime minister again, you have a government again, and the growth is getting better and better, and the unemployment is down under 20%. I happened to be in Andalusia last week. I had a great time. I love your country. This is Mr. Jorge Mariti Moreno, who's managing partner of Uria Menendez in Spain, a law firm active in a lot of countries, Nigeria and Latin America, naturally in Spain, not in India yet because of the specific rules in India, but you will be able to talk about that in a moment. And then on the left is also another lawyer, but from a country which I also love, from Italy. Mr. Rosaria Zacca is partner in Gianni Arrigoni, Grippo Capelli and Partners in Italy, one of the largest law firms in Italy. We will also be happy to have your experience. And last but certainly not least is a professor. A professor who has been a diplomat, who has written books, India for Dummies. It's unbelievable, but happily it's written in French and it's called L'Inde pour les nuls. So Indian English version will come up. That doesn't mean we are the nuls. We are here to learn, to listen, and I think that after your intervention, Professor Boileau, we will be des expérimentés dans l'expérience de l'Inde. Mais à tout seigneur, tout honneur, ladies first. I will give the floor first to Daria Calperina to sketch for us in a broad movement her encounters with India, the problems of taxation, the predictability of business, and last but not least, all the regulatory burdens and maybe opportunities you see in this beautiful subcontinent. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers, obviously, for this absolutely amazing event. It's a pleasure to be here and speak in front of such a distinguished audience. I will introduce Pernod Ricard in a couple of words so you would know what is a company and why I'm speaking here today on the event investments in India. So Pernod Ricard celebrated the last year 40th anniversary. So what started first as a business of two anise-based spirits, Pernod and Ricard, has grown right now to become one of the largest alcohol businesses in the world. We produce such brands as Chivas, Absolut, Martell. In India, we are present since 1996, and our brands, Indian brands like Royal Stag and Blender's Pride, Imperial Blue, that some of you might know, are very popular in India. We sell more than 350 million liters a year. We're big investors in India. We employ 1,600 people in India, directly or indirectly, and we contribute over 8,000 crores, which is more than €1 billion in governmental, federal and state revenues annually. Our business is committed to make an India model and its international rollout. We produce locally. 99% of our production will stay in India, but we also started importing outside India to 7 countries in the world, particularly in the Middle East and in Africa. If we go a little bit broader from the company, what is the industry itself? The footprint of foreign investments in India is very large, particularly after the acquisition of USL by Diageo. Now we can roughly say that 70% of market belongs to multinational companies. So why India? And I think I don't have to spend much time on this because it has been already said enough about this. For alcoholic beverages, India is already the largest whiskey market in the world. And if we take that the population is 1.2 billion people, every year around 10 million people will enter into the drink market and with ever increasing disposable income. So that's why we are in India, and that's why we should be in India. And other companies should also be, but whether it's an easy environment to operate, there are some issues. But nevertheless, what I want to say, I will, as already was indicated, I will touch 3 points on taxation, predictability of business environment, and regulatory difficulties. But I'm confident if we speak with the government, and if the government hears our recommendations, we would really go from strength to strength in our investments, and would everybody would win from this situation. Taxation. In a current tax environment, it becomes increasingly difficult to do business. GST has been spelled out already as the wonderful reform that was passed in India. It is true, but for alcohol, alcohol is excluded from GST. It's the only issue, it's the only article which is excluded from GST. But whether it's fully excluded, while the output, the potable alcohol, is excluded from the GST, the input is not excluded from the GST. So everything which goes into the production of alcohol is not excluded from the GST, meaning it's blocking input tax credit. What happens as a result, that the price for the consumers will go up, there will be less sales, the government will get less revenues, and unfortunately the illicit alcohol will go up. So that's the first issue that we ask the government to address, is to ensure that we respect the decision of the government to exclude alcohol from the GST, but if the output is already excluded, the input into alcohol should be excluded from the GST as well. The second point that I would like to raise with regard to the taxation is the services tax. Services tax is applicable since April 2016, and all government-to-business services are covered, are taxed with a levy. We estimate that it will cost industry around 900 million euros to comply with this law. So again, we're looking into opportunities to see how this could be mitigated. And on taxation, the last but not the least is the import tax of 150%. So when we speak about India, the proportion of the directly of imported final products, so our international brands, is very limited. On the market of 350 million cases, the import alcohol is only 2%, so which is very low. And again, 150%, it's a big impediment for our input, which goes into the local production. We've heard a lot said today about the FTA, and as an industry, as a company, we have been supportive of this FTA. So once it's happened, we will be there to support the Commission and the Indian side to conclude an FTA. But on the other hand, maybe there is an opportunity for Indian government to consider the unilateral reduction of import tariff, where the government will finally get more revenues, investors will be happier, and overall, as FTA is not happening, maybe this is a way to go. Another issue that I wanted to address is in relation to the predictability of the business. It was said before that India, when we speak about India, we speak about India, so it's a one solid entity. For alcoholic beverages, it's a little bit different, because alcohol is a state subject by constitution, meaning that alcohol will be regulated by each state separately, and there's 29 states. So each state would have a right to impose taxes, regulations, or to ban alcohol, as happened, for example, this year by the state of Bihar, when the prohibition of alcohol happened very quickly. So while we again respect the right of each state to put in place policies the way they consider necessary, from the investor point of view, we need time to react to such drastic changes and to adjust our business and to mitigate the losses. That's why we hope that in the future this kind of prohibitions, some kind of regulations will not happen without consulting the business and allowing us an opportunity to adjust. And on prohibitions itself, maybe just to say, after looking at the pattern of what happened after the prohibition, we see that actually it's not that people stopped drinking. We see the pattern in neighboring neighboring states, where the consumption went up. Obviously, people go over the border, or it's a good case scenario where people will go to the neighboring state to get a drink. The bad case scenario that will go to some illicit traders and to buy an alcohol, which will be actually very, very bad for health or even life. And maybe very briefly, I will touch the last point on the multiplicity of regulations. And here, I will just make an example. Alcohol is a heavily regulated sector in India. To the extent it's fine, like alcohol is regulated in many countries. When it becomes problematic, when regulations actually work at cross purpose. And here I will give you a very small example. Small issue, big problems. Before, the size of the label on the bottle that we had was regulated by the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, so that was one size. But recently, another agency, the Ministry of Consumer Affairs, decided that they will put their regulation in place and put their own size of the label, which is larger. So right now we have two agencies with whose regulations we have to comply, and they're actually not the same. And for our sector, it's particularly problematic because, as I said before, alcohol is regulated by states. So in each state, we will have different requirements for label. And we register these labels only once a year, in April, when the excise cycle starts. So meaning that we cannot actually comply with laws before April. And if the new law comes into force in November, then we really cannot comply with it. So again, this kind of issues, small issues, but with serious consequences, are important for us. And it's if if there was a conversation with the business beforehand, then probably this could be avoided. So these are kind of the key issues that I wanted to touch upon, but I would like to conclude with three things. If you had to remember something from my presentation, I would like to remember three things. My presentation was mostly about cooperating with business and letting us know what is the agenda of the government. So on taxation, industry does have good solutions where there will be a win-win situation for the government and for the industry. So let's speak about GST, let's speak about service tax, let's speak about import tariff, or some excise reforms in each state. So we had a very good conversation in Maharashtra and Bengal, which were led to the reforms, which actually were beneficial for the industry and for the government. When we speak about the predictability of the business environment, again, we need to know what will happen tomorrow. We cannot do our business in such a way when we don't know what tomorrow will bring. And the multiplicity of regulations, early consultations with business are must. Here I would like to say that we are improving our relationship with an agency which is very important for us in India, is Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, has been improving very, very much. So we have had good dialogues with them, and recently, for example, they recognized for wines the OMV standards. It's an organization of international organization for wine. So they recognized the standards and brought them into their standards in India, which is a very important, significant step for us. And you see, there are some positive stories to tell as well in India. Thank you very much.
So, thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Katarina. Since we are in a kind of debate forum, I would love the lawyers who are present, Mr. Zacca and Mr. Marti Moreno, to reflect on that aspect of regulations at union level, state level, then local levels. And you as lawyers have been, I think, exposed to demands from your customers on the Indian situation. And if you could, let's say, give us an insight on what you see as hurdles, as possible solutions in this jungle of laws and regulations which governs India, just the same in Europe, by the way. I often say, when I talk to my American friends, the Americans have too many lawyers, but we, in Europe, we have too many laws and too many levels where lawmaking bodies are active. So, please.
First of all, thanks for being here. I'm very happy and honored to be in this place to talk about my experience with India. I started following India in about 2005, 2006. And at the beginning of my career as a lawyer, I was more looking west, so I studied and worked for 4 years in New York City, and I was really looking at that model of life as a lawyer, as in working. When I got more mature, I started looking east on the other side. They become really important players. So going back to your question, regulation is always a big issue, but what we have experienced with India is that since they opened up the market in 1991, when Mr. Singh was Minister of Finance and then Prime Minister, they always kept the right direction. They went slowly sometimes, they got faster other times, but they never stepped back. And this has been a very important signal to all European companies and also for the entire world that once the direction was taken, it was always followed, sometimes with speed, sometimes with not. And this makes me remember about a sentence of Mahatma Gandhi. He said once that speed is irrelevant if you are going to the wrong direction. So it's important sometimes to set up a direction and to follow. Having said that, there's been some issues also not well understood in Europe and other countries, such as the open up of the retail sector, which we understand it's a very delicate and sensitive issue in India. Agricultural aspects is also an important issue that we will have to solve sooner or later, because there's a huge manufacturing agricultural products in India that unfortunately got wasted because you need improvement on the processing of that food. So there are a lot of combinations that could work very well between India and Italy, or India and Europe in general. And regulations slowly are following the right direction. So I'm pretty positive that also in the alcohol sector, after a little bit of mess, that there would be a solution towards a win-win situation for both parties. It may take time, but in our experience, India always find a good way on its own time. That's my point on this issue.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you for the organizers of this very big and important event. Thank you very much for allowing me to share with you some anecdotes and my personal experience with dealing in India. I've been responsible for our Indian desk in my law firm since 1999. And in these 17 years, I've been traveling to India to meet Indian law firms. We do not intend to have an office in India, but we do need to follow up our Spanish clients, Latin American clients, European clients, going from Iberia, Spain and Portugal, into India. And then also the outbound Indian companies coming to Europe, to Iberia, Spain, Portugal, or even to Latin America, where we have offices in Argentina, in Chile, in Colombia, in Mexico, or even in the Portuguese-speaking Africa, Mozambique and Angola. What are Indian companies interested in? Basically, infrastructures, ports, raw materials, energy. Spanish companies also are interested in infrastructure. We got the prize of the Legal Advisors of the Year a few years ago on a deal involving a Spanish company, Isolux, teaming up with Morgan Stanley Infrastructure Fund to take several highways in India. We also are active in the automobile component sector. Indian companies are very strong, but Spanish companies are also very strong because Spain is becoming sort of automobile hub for Europe. So there are many opportunities for this, for Indian companies in Spain and for Spanish companies in India. And an example of that is the joint venture between Mahindra and CA Automotive, where we were also involved. What else? Pharma, IT. Indian companies can contribute a lot in Spain and Latin America in IT. And all these sectors are highly regulated. So Indian companies, they need to do their homework and their due diligence before taking the decision of coming into Europe or Spain. And at the same time, Spanish companies going into India, they can do it in different ways. I acted for a very famous Valencian company. By the way, I'm not the managing partner of my entire firm. I'm the managing partner of the Valencia office. Ladro, the porcelains, very important and prosperous business. They cater for the taste of Indian clients, doing deities and goddesses and all that, and they are very successful in India. You can set up in India just by having an agent or a distributor, or you can set up a company in India. We do this on a regular basis for Spanish companies going into India and for Indian companies coming to Spain in the food sector or whatever. All these sectors are very regulated. Foreign investment in India has been liberalized, and we expect that to go even farther. But there are a few things that I would like to mention, at least three. Beware of letters of intent. Before you negotiate any M&A deal, a letter of intent is a tricky element. Businessmen don't look at letters of intent as being a legal document, and maybe they distribute it in a very relaxed way, and they may have consequences. Sometimes they are not, most of the time they are non-binding, but you want part of the letter of intent to be binding, like for example, exclusivity for a certain period to discuss and negotiate an M&A deal. You're going to invest resources in doing due diligence, so you want that to be respected, and the other party only negotiates with you. Confidentiality, you also want that to be binding, but you don't want to be bound either to sell or to buy at such an early stage. And also letters of intent are useful to determine whether there are any deal breakers. So they become an instrument which is time saving, and they can be a good exercise to do that at a certain moment in time. But the President was talking about regulation. There is a piece of regulation which is very important, both in Europe, in Spain, and in India. Antitrust law, the control over M&A activities. You need the blessing of Brussels if certain thresholds are met. If the investment is affecting few countries in Europe, you also need the approval of the Indian authorities when a European company is going there. And sometimes these deals do not progress. And other than that, in Spain we had a change in our criminal code, and legal entities can now be bound and considered to be liable of criminal offenses. And the only way the directors of a company can escape and get exempted is if they have in place an effective program of compliance with laws to avoid corruption, to avoid using IT things without the appropriate licenses. The directors, they have to show that they have imposed a culture in the company of respect of laws, not only criminal laws to fight against corruption, but also to comply with laws in general, whether it is environmental laws and all that. This raises enormous concerns because they expect you to impose that culture even in your subsidiaries. So if we are talking about a subsidiary in Nigeria, do they have to respect the environmental regulations of Spain that may be higher than those in Nigeria, or what kind? You cannot compensate your executives by giving them a premium, a variable part of their salary, because maybe you are encouraging corruption for a public construction company to get more deals. So this affects really to open a debate within the company that the directors are responsible for. So this, in a nutshell, were the three issues that I wanted to tackle: letters of intent, competition law and antitrust controls of economic concentrations, and compliance of laws, which is basically what you were asking. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Martin Moreno, and thank you, Mr. Zaka. And now I'd love to hear what Dr. Boileau is going to tell us with his experience having lived in India and having written a book on India. So, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, and thanks Sunil, because we've met a few years ago when you launched this chamber, and that's very, very good result. We need such a chamber, and just for one reason. Between India and Europe, we don't communicate. We are living in two different worlds. That's a fact. For instance, in India, you have a proverb, no? Job after job, the best in film. Which the Europeans do not understand because they want to fill the basin immediately, quickly. Number two, there's a misunderstanding still today. When you look at the way India sees herself and the way Europe sees herself. On the Indian side, we are a booming market. We are big and plus. It's growing very fast. We are the fastest growing economy today, which is not, which is true to a certain extent by statistics. 7.5, between 7 and 8% is much better than China today, because the real growth rate in China is about 4 or 5, not more. Yeah, but the Europeans on their side, they say we are the richest market in the world. And that is true. And even if Europe grows only by 1% every year, it adds, to the cake much more than what India had with 7%. So we are not living in the same world. And it's true that for 35 years, I've been visiting, working on India. I always face that misunderstanding. So the point I want to make today is very specific, and I think Mr. Abruzini mentioned very brightly this morning why the FTA should not be the top issue. I myself made the point 4 years ago at the EU Commission, forget about the FTA. We are living in a different world. And this is why EU and India need to redesign their vision for the future. First of all, 2008 is a big break in the world. We are not living anymore in the same global or pro-globalization world. We have seen in the US, Clinton, Trump, but also in Europe everywhere, but also in India. The concern of the common man, there's an Aam Aadmi party in India, very, very successful. The Aam Aadmi is concerned about the day-to-day life. And what he has discovered is that the globalization era was beneficial to companies on the profit side and also to the customers, because the made in China brought very high profit and very cheap price. Even in India, the Chinese corner is the most popular place where people go. But on the negative side, you know better than me the consequences. First of all, desindustrialization everywhere in the world except in China. Even in India. I've seen, the last 20 years, factories closing after factories, actually. In Europe, there's not any more factory, almost everywhere except in few parts of Europe. And this is why you have mass unemployment in Europe and also mass unemployment in India, despite having such a high growth. I have 2 daughters. One is married and living in India. His husband has a lot of friends who cannot find good job. 98% of the workforce do not find proper job in India today. That's a fact. So don't press and push for FTA. We are in a different world. What the economist Daniel Rodrigue called, we are going to the moderate globalization. We need state. We need a state, strong state. We need to take care of environment. You cannot grow at any cost. And you need to create job. And we know that free trade does not create job, it destroys job because it brings benefit. But not to everybody. We have seen inequalities growing everywhere. Last but not least, this is the next session, but I want to touch upon this. The fact that we are entering this new industrial revolution, being the 3rd or the 4th, depending on how you count, make a big difference. Robotics, IT, etc. bring huge potential benefits, but also huge potential cost. Don't say that just by itself industrial revolution brings benefit. In the history, the lesson from the history is that all industrial revolution bring terror at the beginning. That's a fact. The industrial revolution in UK in the 19th century, in Belgium, in France, etc., has tremendous cost for the population. And we had war. Don't say that the war were not the consequences of that industrial revolution. Same for the second revolution. And today there is a huge concern about the benefit and the cost of this. So what could be a win-win game? Not only the Chinese has to use that term, win-win. What could be the win-win game between India and Europe in that new world? Post-China cycle world. I think, the European companies must discover what India has really produce, which is called the Jugaad innovation. It's a world where only that culture can provide huge innovation for the mass. We in Europe mock, the three-wheelers. But the fact that three-wheelers can be really a solution for big cities. Today, India is the best performing economy in terms of solar energy. Solar energy. Europe is lagging behind in solar energy. That's a fact. So India is a land of innovation, let's say for the poor, or let's say for the mass of the population. And you know better than me, in our hour, that is same. How much can I afford to buy a bottle of whiskey in India compared to how much I can afford in Europe? 1 to 10. So Pernod has learned how to produce very cheap, and also the business model, how to sell that kind of alcohol. This is a very specific market, isn't it? Half of the European population today can be considered poor in the broad sense. That's a fact. And we don't have in Europe the business model to bring to that population job and consumer goods or even housing. So European companies must go to India and learn also that kind of flexible, innovative model. But on the other side, for the Indian company, and there are some Indian companies here, I want also to point out that you know better than me. The big mistake, I'm sorry, apologize, I'm not anymore diplomat, of Tata coming to Europe, of Mittal coming to Europe. So many Indian companies, just before the break of 2008, coming to Europe and say, we are the best. Total failure, total failure. If we don't have many Indian companies here at the chamber, that's the reason. What we get in India is clearly, we don't need anymore to go to Europe. It's too costly, we lose our money. So I think what the Indian companies must learn is that Europe remains the top zone in the world for R&D. Not the kind of innovation, but invention. R&D. You know that Tata Group doesn't spend more than 1% of the total turnover in R&D? No future for such companies. And the Jugaad innovation cannot substitute for such R&D. Do you know that Mittal doesn't spend a single penny in R&D? Just bought companies and then it's total failure. He has not invested in R&D. So the European companies and Europe at large can also bring that kind of opportunities. So in the new world, there are opportunities and we must discover together, Indian company and European companies, how to manage our differences. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. I thank you, Professor Boileau, but I want to make one thing clear. I agree totally with you when you say that we have seen the boundaries of globalization somehow, and that social corrections, ecological corrections have to take place, and that you have to see the whole of globalization in a holistic way, the pluses and the minuses, for sure. But having said that, I also think that the free trade and the globalization has lifted 1 billion people out of poverty since 25 years. And I think that's the great achievement of having open economies, trading with each other, but with respect for social aspects, with respect for ecological aspects. I know that our time is up. I ask my friends if they still want the floor, because, yes, please.
I would like to say that this sounds a little bit like the musical chairs, the free trade. Now the music starts playing, and we have to leave our chair because somebody else may come, and we have to find a new chair. But the free trade has made a lot of progress in my own country, since we are members of the European Union. Some jobs have been lost, but there is a lot of welfare for everybody. So I am very much in favor of free trade, and not because I have a personal interest as a lawyer practicing in India. I love the country, but I like to be there as a tourist. Spanish companies, Indian companies in the tourism, in the real estate, they can learn a lot, and there are a lot of opportunities if we have an open market. So I am very much in favor of that.
Thank you for the floor. My point is that I'm an optimistic by nature, and I see a lot of prosperity in the future despite all of this discussion. It's a matter of combination. When I see Indian companies to be attracted by Italian companies, because I live in Italy, and they want to have the technology, the way that we manufacture things, and they do investment, I believe that if they look on the long run, not on the short run, so on the long period, the combination will be successful. Certain production has no sense to continue to be manufactured in Europe, but other production still have sense to be manufactured in Europe. So it's a matter of working on a combination, and also in the long run. The mistakes that most of entrepreneurs have done in the past, in my eyes, is that they wanted to have very soon a result. And short term doesn't fit either India nor Europe. So we have to think about 5-10 years, and the combination is still there. Mahindra purchased Pininfarina. I believe this is going to be a very good investment for them, and also other companies have been very attractive for Indian companies. So I do encourage Indian companies to come up and to come out and buy, as we in Europe have already done in India, but on the long run.
Okay. À vous. Thank you.
It's just to say that actually I'm very happy that this discussion went the way how it went. So we had in one panel somebody who presented the views which are not so much about pro-free trade and those who will support free trade. This dialogue does not happen much in the reality, because usually those who speak against the trade and those who speak pro-trade, they speak in different forums. So here you have both speaking at the same time. Nevertheless, from our point of view, from the company and the industry point of view, for us it's simple, trade or die. So that's why I would certainly say that I respect your views, but on the other hand, we remain confident that for some of the industries, trade is essential, and continue supporting the agenda of the trade. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think that it's important that we conclude now for a matter of time. Just this to end, important is to adapt. Darwin said, it's not the fittest who will survive, but those who adapt to a changing environment, to new challenges. And that's what we have to do, and we have to do it in the right direction, as you said, and speed is irrelevant if you go in the wrong direction. I love that quote. So, thank you very much.